Donald Trump, during a 90-minute speech to Conservative Political Action Conference, also known as CPAC, in Florida, said that those attacking our civilization have no idea of the sleeping giant they have awoken. They're going to find out the hard way, he said, in 2024, November of 2024. But will they find out the hard way with Trump at the helm, or will it be another challenger? Joining me to discuss is spokeswoman for Republicans Overseas UK and a friend of this show, Sarah Elliott. Sarah, hello, and thank you very much for your company today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Darren.
Now, Sarah, the former president, he's 75 now, right? Which actually I've totally forgotten that Trump was getting on himself, because we always think about Biden being, quite the elder statesman, so to speak. He actually addressed CPAC in Florida at the weekend and emerged as a clear leader according to a quick snap poll of the delegates, 59% of the vote to be precise. But in second place, Sarah, was Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, on 28%. Are you starting to get the impression that Ron is chipping away at the Trump vote?
I think he is. He's proven himself to be a really strong executive in Florida. Of course, Florida has remained open throughout the pandemic, with very successful, COVID rates, you could say, in the sense that deaths have remained in the middle of the pack, and yet they have a very elderly population. He's also been very successful at pushing back on critical race theory, very pro-parent, which is the growing political party of 2021 in America, is the parents' party, defending their children in the school systems and anti-mask mandates and that sort of thing. So I think because he's had a stage of which to perform on and show a track record. And of course, the conference is taking place in Florida itself, in Orlando. A lot of the natives are there. He definitely is growing in his presence and leadership and popularity. It should also be noted that in July of 2021, when there was a straw poll done, Donald Trump was at 70%, and now he's at 59%. But even though his numbers may be dropping and Ron DeSantis's reputation is growing nationally, it should be noted this was very much a Trump's CPAC. Trump dominated. The paraphernalia was on display. You could buy anything from gold statues of Trump to blinking lights and T-shirts. And, he clearly commanded the audience on the last day. On Saturday, he was the keynote speaker, and he has signaled that he is going to run again in 2024 to standing cheers, Trump hats galore, Trump T-shirts galore, flags waving. There's no doubt about it that Trump still has it, and he has the heart and base of the Republican Party at the moment.
One of the narratives that I was picking up quite a lot from the weekend was, and of course this is natural given the state of politics internationally right now, the fact of the matter is, and what a lot of Republicans strongly believe, were Donald J. Trump to have been president, Sarah, 2016, we had peace in the world. 2017, we had peace in the world. 2018, we had peace in the world. 2019, we had peace in the world. All of a sudden, President Biden comes in and everything's gone to, well, I would use a word that I can't use in this broadcast, Sarah. But are you of the view as well that actually if President Trump was in power, a little bit more, should we say, robust on foreign policy, a little bit more, well, I was going to use the word uncertain, but what I mean by that is you don't know which route President Trump's going to go down. He keeps you guessing, right? That's what foreign leaders say. Are you of the view that actually if President Trump remained president, that what's happening now in Ukraine wouldn't be taking place?
I don't think it would have been taking place. I think that his peace through strength approach, along with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, really did work on the national stage. I mean, he made the point to say in a speech that, Georgia was invaded under Obama, or under Bush, I'm sorry. And Crimea invaded under Obama, and then Biden, of course, Ukraine. So, of course, there was clearly a pause there when Trump was president, and he did keep everybody on their toes, even Americans on their toes, wondering what he's going to say and do next. I mean, he taunted the president of North Korea, the dictator of North Korea, that my button is bigger than yours. He definitely had a way of engagement that was unseemly to most and definitely unpredictable to our foes. And yet he beefined up NATO to the tune of $400 billion. He was able to enact historic peace agreements throughout the Middle East, and also brought the Chinese to the table to renegotiate trade deals for the first time. And he met with the dictator of North Korea as well, which had never been done before. And he ceased his nuclear testing, nuclear missile testing. So I think that there are some points to his argument that had he been president elected again in 2020, we would not be where we are today. And I think part of it is the disastrous withdrawal of Afghanistan. I think it's also the fact that we weren't arming the Ukrainians enough. And I also think that NATO, and a lot of blame goes to Europe as well. I mean, the German buying Russian national gas. Of course, under Trump, he wasn't allowing the Nord Stream pipeline to continue. And America was exporting our energy, by the way. We were energy independent. And we could have had all of Europe buying our energy and so not being reliant on Russia. There's all, and the first thing Biden did when he was in office was cut off the Keystone pipeline. So, yes, I think the Trump administration has a very strong argument that this wouldn't be happening under him.
Yeah, and then I guess on that point, what I've been really struck by is Germany all of a sudden saying, right, we're going to spend 100 billion euros and actually create a defence infrastructure that just isn't there and hasn't been there for a number of years, given the problems with the domestic electorate and armed forces are concerned with Germany. Obviously, we all know the history there. So now they're saying, right, we're going to spend all of this money. We're going to ensure that we actually go further than meeting 2% of our NATO commitment, 2% of GDP on defence. We're going to go higher than that. Trump was right, Sarah. I'm sorry, but on that fundamental point of meeting your NATO commitments, Trump was absolutely right. Europe has hollowed its defences out.
Yes, relying on the United States to do all the heavy lifting. And it makes absolutely no sense when Russia is much closer to Germany than it is to the United States. You would think, and with the history of Germany and Russia and the Soviet Union, that they would want to build up their defenses, that they would want to participate in just defending their own borders and sort of thing. But there's this very, I think, lazy left thinking in Europe that, we're beyond history, that history won't repeat itself, that we've learned all these lessons from the 20th century. And yet, we've watched Vladimir Putin for 20 years. We know, we have an idea of what he wants to do. He sees himself as uniting the old Russia and being this czar-like figure. And he wants to expand the Russian sphere of influence. And that should, kick the Germans' butt in gear and at least commit to their 2%. The French need to do so as well. That we have a problem with European elites getting entwined with Russian gas companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not only gas companies, but with oligarchs and they're all in the money gravy train. And so they influence their country's policies so that they can make money. And this all needs to come out. This all needs to be revealed. We know about Schroeder and we know about Fillon, but there are dozens of other people who benefit from doing business with Russia. Even it hurts their home country and their countrymen.
Going back to CPAC then, moving away from the international state of geopolitics, the general CPAC reaction, Sarah, what would you sum it up as being? Because I've watched a few clips and things like that. there's still a lot about electoral fraud in 2020, and Trump's rating in the party is obviously still quite high. But at the same time, what you've got running in the background is the potential criminal investigation into Trump and family members. Oh, there are so many interesting dynamics at play here, but it seems to me that, whilst Trump's personal life might be going through a certain amount of turmoil, CPAC, the Conservative base, are still very much a Trump party.
Oh, very much. And they see it, all of these lawsuits, which by the way is two lawsuits, one civil, one criminal. One is based on overinflating assets in order to obtain loans and insurance. And the other is about the family, like Ivanka and Donald Trump Jr., and their role in actually tax evasion and, again, mixing the numbers and family business practices. The base says it's just a complete hit job by Democrats. This is a Democrat partisan-led witch hunt. And they'll always go after this guy because they just fundamentally hate him. And I mean, Letitia James, which is the New York State District Attorney, has said, I have promised to go after Trump and get him. And this was before these cases have come to light. Funny enough, on the criminal investigation, two of the prosecutors have left the case, and they've had to find new prosecutors recently. So that brings into question just how much of a case do they have against Trump. But listen, in Trump world, none of this stuff is talked about. They ignore it. They think it's left-wing bias, and that, of course, their man is going to survive.
On DeSantis, what would he have to do in your opinion? Because you're more of and I don't wish to put words in your mouth, but you're more of a Pompeo man, right?
I like
woman,
DeSantis.
even woman. I've just misgendered you. Sarah.
Oh my gosh, Darren, I'm going to call the.
I'm cancelled. That's it.
You should no, I'm a man on Tuesdays. Today is. I really like Pompeo, and I really like DeSantis, and I want to see a healthy competition out of anybody who wants to run. I think it's good for the party and good for the country. And I think DeSantis is, an admirable choice. And I think he's more palpable to the independents or the more establishment white suburban class, quite frankly. And we have to consider them as well if we want to get across the finish line. You have to be a big tent party. You have to attract those who sometimes vote Democrat and sometimes vote Republican. You can't just be a 35% party and expect to win.
I've just got a problem with the fact that, and I don't wish to appear ageist at all, but if you look at Biden and you look at Trump, right, Trump's not that far off in age from Biden, not really. So if you consider the fact, if Trump were to be elected in 2024, he'd be the same age as as Biden was rather in 2020, right? So
that's correct.
Therefore, are we not getting into a point here where already America is questioning, and this isn't just Republicans, this is across the piece. Americans, we've seen in that poll, I can't remember who conducted that poll, Sarah, but there was a major poll that found that everyday Americans are concerned with the actual capacity, frankly, of President Biden to do his job, to actually be there, and I mean all there mentally.
Yeah.
And would we not get into similar territory with Trump? I think Trump, by the way, I do not question anything to do with that man whatsoever. I think he's clearly a lot more with it and there than President Biden appears to be at certain moments. But surely America, a country of over 300 million people, can do better than putting up two people who are potentially ready for retirement, right?
Well, I think so. And you've named two people who I think could do the job, DeSantis and Pompeo. I think it is an issue. Trump may be running at CPAC at almost 60% popularity, but if you nationally, yes, he does beat Biden, but I think a Ron DeSantis versus Trump, you'll see Ron DeSantis beating Trump in a popularity contest nationwide. Pompeo, I think people associate him with the Trump administration, so maybe slightly less popular than Ron DeSantis. But, you know, I do think we need to keep the message. Trump's message is strong. It works. It's popular.
Yeah.
It's common sense in many regards. But we need a new messenger.
So is it your view then that we need to keep Trumpism, if there is such a thing, if we package that as an ideology, lower taxes, conservative values, getting that all of that SJW stuff out of our schools, stop indoctrinating children? It's basically putting all of what Trump stands for into a neat little bundle and giving it to another messenger.
Yeah, and it's basically the Reagan mantra. I mean, it's peace through strength. It's lower taxes, economic prosperity. It's family values. It's parent control over the education of their children. It's much more pro-life message now in America than it was in the 1980s, but that ties into family values to some extent. But yeah, it's basically government, get out of the way, leave us alone, keep our freedoms, our civil liberties, and it's a wonderful message, and it's one that has proved successful electorally many times over in the last 40 years, and most people can relate to it. They don't want to talk about gender ideology with their 4-year-old or their 6-year-old. They don't want biological males competing against their teenage daughter, which will impact, athletic scholarships to university, etc.
Yeah, they don't want their kids taught that the color of their skin, their immutable characteristics somehow makes them privileged, all of these things.
That's right. We want to get back to Martin Luther King that says, judge me by my character. Not by my appearance. And, we just want to get back to work and keep home more of our hard-earned money than give it to the government, who can't even control our borders. We need to control the southern border. And we've had over 2 million illegal aliens come across the border. And they're not even checked for COVID. And they're not vaccinated. I mean, the hypocrisy is endless. And so just somebody to come in and get our house in shape and do rule of law, stop defunding the police, get crime under control, get the opioid addiction crisis under control. I think, there is bipartisan support for going after some of these pharmaceutical companies and their distribution of opioids. Let's do it, and let's do some criminal justice reform while we're at it, and get fathers home so that they can raise their children and give them a second chance. But we also need to get people off the payroll, the welfare system. We need to completely revitalize our inner cities, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and all of this is part of his strong conservative message. We're seeing Hispanics leave the Democratic Party in droves. And so this whole identity politics isn't even really playing out very well for the left. I mean, when we look at who's the lineup for Democrats in 2024, let's say Joe Biden, can't do it. He's not
incapacitated.
Incapacitated. Who is it? Is it going to be Kamala Harris, aka the Veep? I mean, from the TV show Veep, or she's a comedy hour. And then who's after her? Is people are like, oh, Pete Buttigieg, he's so smart. It's like, what? Okay, well, what makes him presidential material?
Yeah, the pronoun president.
A pronoun president who took off for paternity leave, I'm really sorry. Stop acting like you gave birth to the baby, We know you didn't. Biologically, you can't, Pete. So it just, I feel like it's a really short deck for the Democrats. I really do ask my left-wing friends, where is your leadership of your party? I think they would be good to look at someone like Tulsi Gabbard, but
they won't do that, will they? But I mean, Sarah, what do you say to people then that would say on the Democrat side of things that might well say, well, you've got a point, Sarah, but what I'll say to that is how can you countenance voting for, if President Trump receives the nomination, runs again in 2024, saying Vladimir Putin's a genius for his move in Ukraine? You know, that sort of thing. Would that
Yeah,
not alienate middle America?
totally. It was not a smart thing to say. You don't say, I mean, okay, so Putin is totally playing the left, or sorry, the West. He's totally running rings around us. Yep, we all saw it, but you don't need to say it because it gives fodder to a side of the Republican Party, which only came in with him, by the way, that tends to give Putin passes for things and tends to see him as not as much of a baddie. Listen, I don't want to go to war with Russia. I don't think anybody does.
No.
But that doesn't mean that he's a good guy and we should treat him as a rational actor. I think he has been very clear as to what he wants to achieve as president of Russia, and I don't think that that really coincides with the free people of Ukraine, and I don't think, or the free or people in
Of
Crimea,
America,
perhaps,
or even
or
of
America,
America, right? Of what
you
America
know,
stands for. Yeah.
exactly, or Europe, and
Mm-hmm.
we do have commitments with NATO, which we must keep, and I think has worked in the post-war system. Um, so, we do have to be careful with on the foreign policy front. Yes, we can't engage in conflicts and mission creep and that sort of thing, but at the same time, we should not be praising people who do not deserve it. And Putin is someone who does not deserve any sort of public acknowledgement or praise.
Just finally, Sarah, the social media platform Trump Social launched. Was it last week or the week before? I can't even remember
Yeah,
now.
last week.
And the waiting list was absolutely huge, right? The waiting list to get onto this platform, most downloaded in the Apple App Store, and you look at all of this and you think, wow, there is clearly an appetite for a platform that is free of censorship, that allows the president of the United States. By the way, I noticed that you can declare war and invade Ukraine and still remain on Twitter, but somehow the former Republican president, who in 2020, by the way, received more votes as a sitting president in the US's history, right? You look at all these things and you think, I can understand why there's an appetite for this Truth Social platform.
Oh, completely. And it's such a mockery, really, of Twitter, and again, hypocrisy. When you have like the Ayatollah Khamenei on there along with Putin, and you have the democratically elected president of the United States,
The Taliban, yeah.
the Taliban. I mean, I think there is a desperate need for an open platform that is not censored, and Twitter really needs to be reevaluated. Is it that platform or is it a publisher? Because it sure as heck likes to edit the content on its platform, and that doesn't allow for free speech and communication. And Twitter has become such an influential tool around the world, a PR tool, that it's almost like you have to use it, you have to be on it if you're a world
Exactly. I look at
leader.
the way in which Volodymyr Zelensky is actually using it, Sarah, to communicate with the
Yes,
world, right? To actually
it's
try and
amazing.
galvanize support. It is a very influential tool.
Yes, and it's almost become like a public utility, like water or electricity, and you have to have it in order to get your message out to the world. And so I think that the FCC in the United States really needs to relook at the way it's regulated, and I think it needs competition. And so, Truth Social can be that. And if everybody wants to hear what Trump has to say, so I think it may be better than Getter or Parler because people are just, the president's not on those platforms. So people will want to hear what he has to say. But I do worry that it will become just an echo chamber of his supporters if it isn't able to attract those on the left as well. And I'm sure that they will be boycotting it in principle because they don't want it to be successful and they don't want to see President Trump, beat out Twitter or any other mainstream platform. So time will tell.
Absolutely. Well, time will tell on all of what we've been discussing today, won't it, Sarah? I will no doubt speak about more of this in the not too distant future. But for now, Sarah Elliott, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Reasoned is a grassroots organisation that's entirely funded by people like yourself. So if you're in a position to do so, please do consider supporting us by clicking the link to the side there.